Alright, in this video we're going to be talking about percentages, and we're pretty much just getting close to the topics on financial calculations. So I thought it would be a good idea just to revise the concept of a percentage, just to make sure that you understand what it is about and how to perform conversions from a percentage to a decimal number and vice versa. So everyone is familiar with the concept that 50% is essentially just half of something. So you can represent this number as 0.5 or basically just half if you wanted to write it as a fraction. Now, the trouble comes when people are dealing with small percentages. So say, for example, that you wanted to have something like 3% and then you wanted to express that as a percentage. Now, the question is, how would you represent that as a decimal or even a fraction? Well, the key idea is that a percentage is essentially just going to be divided by 100. So if you want to express it as a decimal. And the reason for that is that we want those percentage signs to basically cancel each other out. So this is going to be equal to 0.03 or basically just 3 on 100 if we wanted to retain the form as a fraction. Now, what do you think would happen if you have something like this, 0.5%? Now, this is where a lot of people tend to fall over for, because they think that 0.5% is the same as 0.5, but it is in fact not. So remember that we need to actually divide this by 100 to get the decimal form. And then when we perform the division, we know that if we're dividing by 100, we're essentially just moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. So that means we're going to add 2 zeros here, and then we're going to move this decimal point 2 times to the left. So we're going to be left with the following, 0.005. Alright, if you wanted to express this in terms of a fraction, then what you would do is you would have to try and start from here. So you have 0.5 over 100. Now obviously as a fraction you need to express both the numerator and denominator as a whole number. So you need to find out, okay, so how can we multiply this thing by a certain number such that the top becomes a whole number? Well, if we multiply the 0.5 by 2, this becomes 1. So we could easily just write this as 1 on 200. So I guess the process is not so difficult once you figure out exactly by what number you need to multiply it in order to make it into a fraction that contains integers in the numerator and denominator. And obviously this is pretty straightforward, but say you have something like 0.45. This is not a percentage, but rather just a decimal number. So let's say you wanted to convert this into a percentage. So what would you do in that case? Well, if you're given the decimal number as it is, then all you would do is basically just multiply this number by 100. So we multiply the number by 100%, and that gives us 45%. So basically that's the same as saying if we wanted to find out what is, say for example you had $30 and you wanted to find 45% of that quantity. Then how would you do that? Well, you would grab your $30 and then you will multiply that by 0.45, which is this decimal that corresponds to that percentage. And then if we put that in the calculator, this is going to come down as $13. So let me just put it here. It's dollars, 13.50. So that would be 45% of your $30. Another way in which you could have done this is say, okay, so let's say I have 45%, but I don't know what the decimal is. You would simply multiply your $30 by 45% and then divide by 100. Because remember, the idea is that the percentage sign cancels out from that operation. So we only want to be left out with the dollar sign. So then in that case, you would still get the same quantity again. Okay, so now let's do some more examples involving this. So say for example you want to express 25% as a decimal. Then we know, okay, so we just divide that by 100. Now that's going to become, what's that? That's going to be 1 on 4 actually, because both of these numbers are multiples of 5. So if we, actually both multiples of 25, so we can divide both by 25 to get 1/4. And then we know this is going to be 0.25. So the key idea is that a percentage is generally expressed as a number between 0 and 1. But of course, you can always have a percentage that is larger than 100%. So for example, let's say you wanted to find 200% of $100. What do you think you would do in that case? Well, we would grab the $100, right? So, and then we're going to multiply that by 200% over 100%. So everything is always taken with respect to the 100%. So we're going to have those numbers cancel out. The percentage sign is going to cancel out as well. And then we're going to be left with $200. So basically, earning 200% of some amount of money is the same as just duplicating that amount of money that we started with. Same as if we had something like, say, we earned 135% of some quantity of money, like $10. Then what we would do is grab the $10 and we will multiply it by 135 over 100. Cancel out the percentage signs. Now the two zeros are essentially just going to move the decimal place twice to the left, but this 10 here is actually going to move the decimal place back one to the right. So we can cancel out 1 0 from here and 1 0 from the 100, and now we're left with 135 over 10, which is going to be 13.50, which is the same number that we had here. So what this means is that you're grabbing 100% of a number is essentially just the number itself. So if you're earning 100%, it means you're earning $10. If you're earning over 100%, then that means that you're essentially earning more than you started with. And you're adding that to the initial amount. So we can also do this with mixed numbers. So we can have something like 3 1/4%. And say we wanted to convert that into a fraction. So what we would do in that case is, well, first of all, we need to convert this to a fraction. So we do the cyclic calculation. So times plus divide. 4 times 3 is 12 plus 1 over 4. That becomes 13 on 4%. And now if we actually want to express this as just a decimal number or a fraction that does not contain the percentage sign, we need to divide by 100%. So basically we need to divide this by 100%. And the reason for that is that we basically want these two percentage signs to cancel out. So if we remember correctly, when we do division, it's the same as doing multiplication of fractions, but we're going to swap around the order of the numerator and denominator on the second fraction. So this is the same as writing 13 on 4% times 1 over 100%, such that the percentage signs cancel out, and now we're simply going to multiply the numerator and the denominators together. So this is going to become 13 on 400. So that's how you would express this percentage here, which is a mixed number, as a fraction if you wanted to get rid of that percentage sign.